Gabriella Washington, CEO of Phoenix Tech Solutions, stands frozen in the first-class cabin, staring at her phone with triumph as the flight attendant who just humiliated her suddenly pales at the notification on his own device. Termination effective immediately, shocking the entire cabin into silence as passengers witness power dynamics dramatically reversed in an instant. Where are you watching from today? If this moment of justice resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories of powerful comebacks against discrimination. Now let's rewind to see how this extraordinary confrontation came to be. Gabriella Washington never forgot where she came from. The crumbling two-bedroom apartment in Detroit's East Side where she shared a room with 3 siblings. The second-hand clothes her mother meticulously repaired each weekend. The public library where she spent countless hours because it was the only place with reliable internet access for homework. Those humble beginnings shaped her into the formidable business force she became. Through sheer determination and brilliant intellect, she secured a full scholarship to Harvard Business School, graduating at the top of her class despite working part-time jobs throughout her studies. After graduation, while her classmates joined established firms, Gabriella took a different path. With just $20,000 saved from her campus jobs and a revolutionary software concept, she founded Phoenix Tech Solutions from her tiny studio apartment. The company name reflected her personal philosophy, rising from difficult circumstances to create something extraordinary. Over 12 grueling years, she built Phoenix Tech into a powerhouse. The company specialized in efficiency optimization software that transformed manufacturing processes. Her client list expanded from local businesses to Fortune 500 companies, and eventually, international corporations. Phoenix Tech employed over 3,000 people, with offices in 7 countries. The most recent valuation put the company worth at just over $4 billion. Last month, Gabriella had finalized her most ambitious acquisition yet, Aerotech Industries, a major supplier of components to commercial airlines. The $2.3 billion deal positioned Phoenix Tech to revolutionize air travel efficiency. It also meant Phoenix now held significant ownership stakes in several airlines that used Aerotech components exclusively. Despite her tremendous success, Gabriella maintained a philosophy of quiet confidence. She rarely flaunted her power or wealth, preferring to let her work speak for itself. Her employees described her as tough but fair, demanding excellence while providing the resources to achieve it. Unlike some executives who wielded their authority like a weapon, Gabriella used her position thoughtfully, intervening directly only when truly necessary. The past week had taken its toll on her usually impeccable appearance. 3 days of intense negotiations in San Francisco had left her exhausted. The talks to finalize implementation details for Aerotech systems across Atlantic Airways' fleet had been particularly challenging. The airline's old guard executives had resisted many of her innovative proposals before finally conceding to the inevitable technological upgrades. Rather than taking her private jet back to Detroit, Gabriella made a last-minute decision to fly commercial on Atlantic Airways Flight 2187. She wanted to experience firsthand how Aerotech components performed in actual flight conditions. Always the methodical businesswoman, she preferred direct observation over second-hand reports. Boarding the plane in her Armani suit and Louboutin heels, Gabriella looked every bit the successful executive she was. Yet the subtle signs of fatigue, the slight shadows under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, revealed the intense pressure she constantly managed. She carried a small leather carry-on and her designer laptop bag, moving with practiced efficiency toward the first-class cabin. As she settled into seat 2A by the window, Gabriella noticed the head flight attendant, Benjamin Morris, watching her with undisguised suspicion. His eyes narrowed slightly as they swept over her, lingering a moment too long. Gabriella recognized that look immediately. She had encountered it countless times throughout her career. It was the look of someone who didn't believe she belonged. Sighing inwardly, she stowed her bags and settled into her seat, hoping the 5-hour flight would provide a rare opportunity to rest before diving back into work upon landing in Detroit. She had no idea this routine flight was about to become anything but ordinary. Gabriella had just opened her laptop when a shadow fell across her tray table. Benjamin Morris stood over her, his expression a carefully crafted mask of professional concern that didn't reach his eyes. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice carrying clearly to nearby passengers. "May I see your boarding pass? I believe there might be some confusion with your seating assignment." Gabriella glanced around the first-class cabin. 8 of the 12 seats were occupied, all by white passengers. None of them had been approached for verification. "Of course," she replied evenly, retrieving her phone to display her mobile boarding pass. "Seat 2A, first class." Benjamin barely glanced at the screen before shaking his head. "There seems to be an error. This section is for first-class passengers only." "Yes, I'm aware. As you can see, I have a first-class ticket," Gabriella said, maintaining her composure while pointing specifically to the class designation on her boarding pass. Benjamin frowned, making a show of examining the boarding pass more carefully this time. "This doesn't look right. Our system rarely makes mistakes like this. Did you perhaps get upgraded at the last minute?" "No," Gabriella replied, her patience beginning to wear thin. "I purchased this first-class ticket 3 days ago." By now, several passengers were watching the interaction with undisguised interest. A white businessman across the aisle smirked slightly, while an elderly white woman 2 rows ahead turned completely around in her seat to stare. "Perhaps we should verify this with the main system," Benjamin insisted, his tone suggesting he was being extraordinarily accommodating. "These mobile passes can be glitchy sometimes." Gabriella reached into her purse and withdrew her printed boarding pass. "Here's the printed version as well. As you can see, it's seat 2A, first class." Benjamin took the paper, examining it with exaggerated thoroughness. By now, another flight attendant named Tyler had joined him, standing so close to Gabriella that she felt cornered in her window seat. "What seems to be the problem?" Tyler asked, not addressing Gabriella but rather his colleague. "This passenger has somehow ended up in first class," Benjamin explained, as if Gabriella weren't present. "I'm trying to sort out how this mix-up occurred." "I purchased a first-class ticket," Gabriella stated firmly, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear clearly. "There is no mix-up." "Ma'am, there's no need to raise your voice," Tyler admonished, though Gabriella had done no such thing. The humiliation was building. Every passenger in first class was now openly watching the confrontation. Gabriella felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the acute awareness of being singled out, of being treated differently, and the impossible choice between defending herself and avoiding confirming stereotypes about angry black women that would only make the situation worse. "Is there an issue here that's delaying our departure?" A new voice entered the conversation as pilot Kenneth Reynolds emerged from the cockpit, his captain's hat tucked under his arm. "Just sorting out a seating confusion, Captain," Benjamin replied. "This passenger believes she should be in first class." "I don't believe anything," Gabriella interjected, her professional training barely keeping her tone level. "I purchased a first-class ticket, which I've shown twice now." Captain Reynolds glanced at her boarding pass still in Benjamin's hand, then at Gabriella, his expression unreadable. "I see. Well, we're scheduled for an on-time departure, so we need to resolve this quickly." He turned to Gabriella with what appeared to be a reasonable tone. "Ma'am, would you mind temporarily moving to economy while we sort this out? We can always move you back if the system confirms your seating assignment. We don't want to delay the flight for everyone else." The implication was clear. She was being asked to sacrifice her rightfully purchased seat to avoid inconveniencing the other passengers. The suggestion that she move temporarily was transparent. Once the flight was airborne, they had no intention of addressing the confusion. Gabriella weighed her options quickly. She could refuse to move and likely be labeled disruptive, possibly even removed from the flight. She could demand to speak to someone higher in authority, but that would indeed delay the flight and potentially create a scene that would end up online within minutes. Or she could comply for now, document everything, and address it through proper channels later. "Fine," she said finally, gathering her belongings. "I'll move temporarily until this is resolved." Benjamin's smile held the faintest hint of triumph as he gestured toward the economy section. Thank you for your cooperation. Tyler will help you find your new seat. As Gabriella stood to follow Tyler to economy class, she noticed several passengers watching with expressions ranging from discomfort to outright satisfaction. Not a single one spoke up about the obvious discrimination they had just witnessed. The economy section of the plane felt like a different world. Gabriella found herself wedged into a middle seat between a man whose frame spilled over the armrest and a teenage girl with headphones blasting music loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. The contrast with the spacious first-class seat she had paid for couldn't have been more stark. Tyler had placed her in row 23, far enough back that the passengers in first class wouldn't see her, but close enough to the front that those in the first several rows of economy had witnessed her humiliating relocation. Whispers and sideways glances followed her as she stowed her designer carry-on bag under the seat in front of her. Have you ever been in a situation where you were treated unfairly, but felt powerless to speak up in the moment? Comment number 1 if you've experienced discrimination and had to strategically choose your battles. Hit that like button if you believe in karma coming back around to those who abuse their authority. Can I get you anything? A different flight attendant, her name tag read Vanessa, approached with genuine concern in her expression. No, thank you, Gabriella replied, then reconsidered. Actually, yes. Could I have the name of your customer service director? I'd like to file a formal complaint when we land. Vanessa looked confused. Of course, but weren't you seated in first class? I saw you during boarding. Yes, I was. I purchased a first-class ticket, but your colleagues Benjamin and Tyler, along with Captain Reynolds, decided I didn't belong there. Understanding dawned in Vanessa's eyes. I'm so sorry. That's completely unacceptable. I'll get you that information right away. As Vanessa moved away, Gabriella's phone buzzed with incoming emails. The poor reception during takeoff had delayed several messages, which now flooded in as the plane reached cruising altitude. Most were routine business matters, but 3 in particular caught her attention. The first was from her chief legal officer, confirming that all paperwork for the Aerotech acquisition had been finalized and filed. The second was from her chief financial officer with details about Phoenix Tech's new ownership stakes in various airlines as part of the deal. The third was from her executive assistant attaching the complete organizational chart of Atlantic Airways as requested during her San Francisco meetings. Gabriella's fingers froze above her phone screen as the information coalesced in her mind. Phoenix Tech's acquisition of Aerotech included a 17% ownership stake in Atlantic Airways, the very airline she was flying on, the very airline whose employees had just discriminated against her. A startling realization struck her. She technically employed everyone on this flight. What would you do in Gabriella's position? Would you use your newfound power immediately, or wait until after landing? Comment number 2 if you believe in addressing discrimination immediately, and number 3 if you think strategic patience yields better results. Gabriella sat back in her cramped seat, considering her options. She could easily make a call and have the entire flight crew terminated before they even landed. But was that the right approach? Would it address the systemic issues that allowed such discrimination to occur in the first place? As she debated, memories of similar incidents throughout her career flashed through her mind. The professor who assumed she was in the wrong classroom on her first day at Harvard. The potential investors who directed their questions to her white male intern rather than to her. The security guard who followed her around high-end stores even when she wore her most expensive clothes. Each time, she had swallowed the humiliation and focused on proving herself through excellence. Each time, she told herself that individual confrontations wouldn't change the system. But now, with actual power at her disposal, was it time for a different approach? The pattern was what decided her. This wasn't an isolated incident or a simple misunderstanding. This was part of a persistent pattern of discrimination that would continue affecting others if not addressed decisively. Careful to maintain an expression of calm indifference, Gabriella began typing emails while appearing to browse the in-flight entertainment. To her chief technology officer, request for immediate access to Atlantic Airways' internal HR records. To her chief security officer, full background checks on Benjamin Morris, Tyler Williams, and Captain Kenneth Reynolds. To her Chief of Staff, implementation of Phoenix Protocol, the company's comprehensive response to discrimination incidents. Within minutes, her executive team was mobilized. While the flight crew believed they were dealing with just another passenger they could mistreat with impunity, they had no idea that a corporate earthquake was already in motion beneath their feet. Are you ready to see what happens when someone underestimates a woman who has fought her way to the top? Let's continue with what happened next in this shocking confrontation. 30,000 feet above the Midwest, Gabriella's executive team sprang into action with military precision. The Phoenix Protocol, named after the company's ethos of transformation, was a comprehensive response system developed after Gabriella experienced discrimination from a potential business partner years earlier. It combined rapid information gathering, documentation, and strategic intervention designed to address not just individual incidents, but systemic patterns. In the Phoenix Tech headquarters in Detroit, Stanley Chen, the Chief Technology Officer, was already accessing Atlantic Airways' internal systems, something completely legal under the terms of the recent acquisition agreement. As a significant shareholder with board representation, Phoenix Tech had negotiated robust access rights to all company data for integration purposes. Cross-reference employee records for all personnel on Flight 22187 with any customer complaints filed in the past 5 years, Stanley instructed his team. Flag any incidents with potential racial or discriminatory elements. Meanwhile, Gabriella's chief security officer, Terrence Washington, had initiated background checks on the 3 employees involved. Atlantic Airways' own security cameras, standard on all their flights for safety purposes, provided high-definition footage of the entire incident from multiple angles. The airline's policy of recording all interactions in first class as a customer service measure had unwittingly documented their own staff's misconduct perfectly. "Pull the footage from cameras 2, 3, and 7, Terrence directed. "Get me complete transcripts of every word exchanged. Then find me everything on Benjamin Morris's employment history going back to his hiring date." The results began flowing to Gabriella's tablet within 20 minutes, carefully disguised as routine business documents to avoid attention from neighboring passengers. What they revealed was disturbing but not surprising. Benjamin Morris had accumulated 17 passenger complaints over his 8-year career with Atlantic Airways. 11 specifically mentioned rude or dismissive treatment. 6 explicitly mentioned racial bias, with 4 filed by black passengers who had been questioned about their presence in first class despite having valid tickets. None of these complaints had resulted in any disciplinary action. Captain Kenneth Reynolds had an even more troubling history. As a senior pilot with influence over crew assignments, he had specifically requested to work with Benjamin on multiple occasions. His personnel file included 2 incidents where he had intervened to prevent disciplinary actions against Benjamin following passenger complaints. The connection between the 2 men extended beyond professional association. Social media analysis revealed they were members of the same exclusive country club in Detroit, one that had only begun accepting black members 3 years earlier after a discrimination lawsuit. Flight attendant Tyler Williams had fewer direct complaints, but the pattern was clear. He consistently backed up Benjamin in disputed passenger interactions and had never reported any concerns about his colleagues' behavior despite airline policies requiring staff to flag potential discrimination. As Gabriella reviewed this information, flight attendant Vanessa Jenkins approached her seat again. "Ms. Washington?" she said quietly, leaning down to avoid being overheard. "I couldn't help noticing what happened earlier. It's not the first time." Gabriella looked up, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Vanessa glanced around nervously. "Benjamin does this regularly. Questions black passengers in first class, especially women. Most don't complain officially because he's careful to make it seem like a procedural issue, and Captain Reynolds always backs him up." "And the airline does nothing?" Gabriella asked, though she already knew the answer. "HR buries the complaints. Benjamin's uncle sits on the board of directors." Vanessa hesitated, then added, "I've reported it twice. Both times I was assigned to less desirable routes for months afterward." Gabriella thanked her for the information, adding another note to her growing file. The systemic nature of the problem was becoming clearer by the minute. Her tablet pinged with a new message. Passengers from the flight had begun posting about the incident on social media. 2 had sent direct messages of support to Phoenix Tech's corporate accounts, having recognized Gabriella from recent business news coverage of the Aerotech acquisition. "We witnessed blatant racism on our flight today," one message read. "Your CEO was treated abhorrently by Atlantic Airways staff. She handled it with incredible grace." Another one contained a surreptitiously recorded video clip of Benjamin questioning Gabriella's ticket while not verifying any other passenger's seating assignment. The evidence was overwhelming and continued to mount. Yet throughout it all, Gabriella maintained absolute professionalism, betraying nothing of the righteous fury building inside her or the corporate mechanisms she had set in motion. As the captain announced they would begin their descent into Detroit Metropolitan Airport in 20 minutes, Gabriella made one final call to her chief of staff. "Everything is confirmed?" she asked quietly. "Yes," came the reply. "All actions are ready to implement on your command." "Proceed," Gabriella said simply, ending the call. She buckled her seatbelt as the plane began its descent, mentally preparing for what would happen once they reached the gate. After years of experiencing discrimination with little recourse, she finally had the power to create consequences, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been in her position without the means to fight back. The touchdown at Detroit Metropolitan Airport was smooth, the aircraft taxiing steadily toward Gate A-17. Passengers began the familiar ritual of gathering belongings and checking phones as the plane approached the terminal. For most, it was the routine end to a routine flight. For the crew of Flight 2187, it was about to become the most consequential workday of their careers. As the aircraft docked at the gate, a synchronized digital assault silently deployed. Every company tablet and phone belonging to the flight crew simultaneously received the same notification, an urgent message requiring immediate acknowledgement before standard deplaning procedures could begin. Benjamin Morris was the first to check his device. The color drained from his face as he read the message on his screen. Employment termination notice, effective immediately. Violation of Atlantic Airways Anti-Discrimination Policy, Section 4.2. Security will escort you from the premises upon arrival. Complete documentation has been forwarded to your personal email. His eyes darted frantically around the cabin, looking for some explanation or perhaps hoping it was a mistake. When his gaze landed on Gabriella still seated calmly in economy, a flash of recognition crossed his face. Captain Reynolds emerged from the cockpit, his own device clutched tightly in his hand. His face had turned an alarming shade of red as he whispered urgently to Benjamin. Tyler stood frozen in the galley, visibly trembling as he read his own notification. A suspension pending investigation. The plane door opened to reveal an unusual welcoming committee. Rather than the typical gate agents, a group of stern-faced individuals in business attire waited on the jet bridge. 2 wore Atlantic Airways executive badges. 3 others had Phoenix Tech identification, and most tellingly, 2 airport security officers stood at attention. "What is the meaning of this?" Captain Reynolds demanded as he approached the door, still clinging to the authority he had possessed just minutes earlier. "Captain Reynolds, please step aside and allow passengers to deplane," said a woman with an Atlantic Airways executive badge. "You'll be briefed separately." The confusion among the crew created a surreal atmosphere as passengers began to exit. Many sensed something unusual was happening, slowing their pace to observe the unfolding drama. Social media alerts were already buzzing through some passengers' phones. News was spreading about Phoenix Tech's emergency intervention at Detroit Metro. Benjamin stood rigidly by the exit, compelled by years of training to thank departing passengers despite his obvious distress. When he attempted to step away, one of the Phoenix Tech representatives firmly directed him to remain in place until all passengers had deplaned. Most remarkably, the airport terminal visible through the aircraft door was already undergoing a transformation. Workers were installing a Phoenix Tech banner over the Atlantic Airways sign at the gate, a visual representation of the corporate power shift happening in real time. Media personnel had gathered in the terminal, alerted by social media posts from passengers who had witnessed the initial incident. News of a major discrimination complaint involving a prominent CEO traveled fast in Detroit, where Gabriella was a respected business leader and philanthropist. Throughout the deplaning process, Gabriella remained in her economy seat, allowing other passengers to exit first. She responded to urgent emails, approved final documents, and monitored the implementation of her instructions with calm efficiency. Not once did she look toward the front of the plane where the crew's professional lives were imploding. Only after the last passenger had departed did Gabriella rise from her seat, straighten her designer suit, and walk deliberately toward the exit. The economy cabin felt eerily empty, her footsteps distinct on the carpet as she approached the scene of her earlier humiliation, now transformed into the site of her professional vindication. As she reached the first-class cabin, Benjamin's eyes met hers. The recognition that had begun as confusion now crystallized into understanding and fear. This wasn't just any passenger he had discriminated against. This was Gabriella Washington, CEO of Phoenix Tech Solutions, and apparently, his ultimate boss. Gabriella paused briefly, her expression revealing nothing as she observed the man who had so confidently demeaned her just hours earlier. Without saying a word, she continued walking, her dignified exit more powerful than any verbal confrontation could have been. As she stepped into the jet bridge, the Atlantic Airways executive extended her hand. "Ms. Washington, I'm Patricia Coleman, Chief Operating Officer. On behalf of Atlantic Airways, I want to express our deepest apologies for your experience today." "Thank you, Ms. Coleman," Gabriella replied evenly. "But we both know apologies are insufficient. I'll see you at the emergency board meeting in 3 hours." With that, she continued into the terminal where her executive team waited, ready to escort her to the corporate headquarters where the real work of transformation was about to begin. Behind her, Benjamin Morris was being escorted from the aircraft by security. His airline career terminated after years of unchecked discriminatory behavior. Captain Reynolds was being informed that his retirement would be effective immediately, with a pending review of his pension benefits. The consequences they had avoided for so long had finally arrived, delivered by the very woman they had mistakenly believed was powerless. The executive conference room at Atlantic Airways Detroit headquarters hummed with tense energy. Hastily assembled board members and senior executives shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs, many having abandoned important meetings or personal commitments to attend this unprecedented emergency session. At the head of the mahogany table sat Gabriella Washington, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Beside her, Patricia Coleman, the COO who had met her at the gate, looked pale. Across the table, Benjamin Morris and Captain Kenneth Reynolds sat isolated, a visible gap between them and the other attendees. Both men had been allowed to change from their uniforms into civilian clothes, but their body language, Benjamin hunched forward protectively, Kenneth sitting rigidly upright, betrayed their distress. "Let's begin," Gabriella said, her voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "For those who haven't connected the dots yet, I am Gabriella Washington, CEO of Phoenix Tech Solutions. Following our acquisition of Aerotech Industries, Phoenix Tech now holds a 17% stake in Atlantic Airways, making us your largest single shareholder." She paused, allowing this information to sink in. Several board members exchanged alarmed glances. Today, while flying on Atlantic Airways Flight 2187, I experienced firsthand the discriminatory practices that apparently run unchecked in your organization. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wished you could do something about it? Comment number 1 if you believe companies should be held accountable for the actions of their employees. Hit that like button if you think more CEOs should take bold stands against racism in their organizations. Gabriella tapped her tablet, and the large screen on the wall displayed high-definition video of her interaction with Benjamin in the first-class cabin. The footage, captured from multiple angles by the plane's security cameras, clearly showed Benjamin questioning only her seating assignment while ignoring all other passengers. "Mr. Morris," Gabriella addressed him directly, "would you care to explain why you felt it necessary to verify my first-class ticket but none of the white passengers seated around me?" Benjamin shifted uncomfortably, It was just a routine verification. I thought there might have been a mistake with your boarding pass. A routine verification you performed only on me, the only black passenger in first class. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact supported by the video evidence. I apologize if you felt targeted, Benjamin said, emphasizing the word felt in a way that subtly invalidated her experience. That wasn't my intention. Intentions are irrelevant when patterns are established, Gabriella replied coolly. With another tap on her tablet, the screen displayed a spreadsheet. This is a summary of passenger complaints filed against you over the past 8 years. 17 total complaints, 6 explicitly mentioning racial bias, 4 specifically from black passengers questioned about their presence in first class, despite having valid tickets. Exactly as happened to me today. Benjamin's face flushed. Those were all misunderstandings. 17 misunderstandings with a clear racial pattern? Gabriella raised an eyebrow. That defies probability. She turned her attention to Captain Reynolds. And you, Captain. Your intervention wasn't about maintaining an on-time departure. It was about protecting Mr. Morris, as you've done on at least 2 previous occasions when passengers filed discrimination complaints against him. Kenneth attempted to interject. As captain, my responsibility is to ensure your responsibility, Gabriella cut him off, is to ensure all passengers are treated with dignity and respect. Instead, you used your authority to reinforce discriminatory treatment. She displayed additional documentation on the screen, emails between Kenneth and Atlantic Airways HR showing his intervention to have complaints against Benjamin classified as resolved without action. This isn't about 2 individuals, Gabriella continued, addressing the entire room. This is about a systemic failure within Atlantic Airways. Your anti-discrimination policies exist on paper but are meaningless in practice. HR buries complaints. Management ignores patterns. Board oversight is non-existent. Several executives looked down, unable to meet her gaze. As of this moment, Phoenix Tech is implementing a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination across all levels of Atlantic Airways. Mr. Morris has been terminated. Captain Reynolds is being placed on administrative leave pending review of his pension eligibility. Tyler Williams is suspended during investigation of his complicity. What would you do if you suddenly had the power to address discrimination you'd experienced? Would you focus on punishing individuals or changing the system? Comment number 2 if you believe in system-wide change, and number 3 if you think individual accountability matters most. One of the board members, an older white man, finally spoke up. Ms. Washington, while we respect your company's significant investment, this seems like a disproportionate response to what could be characterized as a misunderstanding. Gabriella's gaze shifted to him. And you are? Richard Blackwell. I've served on this board for 22 years. Mr. Blackwell, let me be absolutely clear. This was not a misunderstanding. It was discrimination, documented and substantiated. Your characterization of it as anything else is precisely why these problems persist. She stood, commanding the room's complete attention. Phoenix Tech did not become a $4 billion company by tolerating mediocrity or misconduct. Atlantic Airways will either adapt to operate with the same standards of excellence and equity, or we will increase our ownership stake and force change through more direct means. The threat was clear. Comply voluntarily or face a hostile takeover. By tomorrow morning, I want a comprehensive audit of all discrimination complaints filed in the past decade. I want a review of all HR protocols for handling such complaints. And I want a clear plan for implementing anti-bias training across your entire organization. No one spoke as Gabriella gathered her materials. The Phoenix Tech legal team will remain to outline specific requirements. I expect full compliance. As she turned to leave, Benjamin stood suddenly. You can't do this. You're destroying my career over nothing. Gabriella paused, meeting his gaze directly for the first time since the confrontation began. Your career was destroyed by your own actions, Mr. Morris. Today, you simply faced consequences you've long avoided. She walked out, leaving behind a room of executives confronting the reality that their company would never be the same. The power dynamics had shifted irrevocably, and a new standard of accountability had been established. As the door closed behind her, Gabriella allowed herself the smallest smile. This was just the beginning. Let's see what happened next as this corporate earthquake sent shockwaves through the entire airline industry. By nightfall, the tremors from Gabriella's intervention had evolved into a full-scale corporate earthquake. Atlantic Airways stock had dropped 12% in after-hours trading as news of the discrimination incident and subsequent executive action spread across financial markets. The hashtag #FirstClassJustice was trending nationally, with the video clip of Benjamin questioning Gabriella's seating assignment viewed over 3 million times. The emergency board meeting had extended well into the evening. Phoenix Tech's legal team, led by Chief Legal Officer Diana Reynolds, had presented a comprehensive set of demands that amounted to a complete overhaul of Atlantic Airways' corporate culture. "These are non-negotiable requirements," Diana had stated firmly, distributing tablets with the document already loaded. "Phoenix Tech is prepared to increase our ownership stake to controlling interest if these measures aren't implemented fully and immediately." The demands included 1. Independent audit of all discrimination complaints filed in the past decade. 2. Revision of HR protocols for handling discrimination reports. 3. Mandatory anti-bias training for all employees. 4. Anonymous reporting system managed by a third party. 5. Quarterly diversity and inclusion assessments. 6. Performance metrics for executives tied directly to improvement in these areas. 7. Public transparency about findings and remedial actions. Richard Blackwell, the board member who had dismissed the incident as a misunderstanding, led the resistance. "This is regulatory overreach. We're an airline, not a social justice organization." Diana had fixed him with a piercing stare. "Mr. Blackwell, Phoenix Tech's investment gives us the right to ensure our capital isn't supporting discriminatory practices. This isn't social justice. It's sound business practice and risk management." The debate had raged for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Phoenix Tech held significant leverage not just through their ownership stake but through the court of public opinion. By 9 o'clock, the board had capitulated, approving all demands with only Blackwell dissenting. Gabriella, monitoring from her office at Phoenix Tech headquarters across town, had received regular updates throughout the evening. When the final vote tally reached her, she immediately initiated Phase 2 of her response. At precisely 9:30 p.m., Phoenix Tech released a public statement. "Today, our CEO experienced firsthand the discrimination that many travelers face daily. Rather than accepting apologies or seeking individual redress, Phoenix Tech is committed to addressing the systemic issues that allow such incidents to occur. Effective immediately, we are launching the Phoenix Standard, a comprehensive framework for equity and inclusion that will be implemented across all our business partnerships. Atlantic Airways has committed to being the first adopter of this standard, with complete transparency regarding their progress." The statement was accompanied by a detailed outline of the Phoenix Standard and an announcement of a press conference scheduled for the following morning. While the public statement projected confident resolution, behind the scenes, the situation was still evolving rapidly. Throughout the evening, Gabriella's inbox filled with messages from unexpected sources. Most significantly, Atlantic Airways employees began coming forward through the anonymous reporting system that Phoenix Tech had established within hours of the incident. By midnight, 37 current and former employees had shared their experiences of discrimination or reported incidents they had witnessed. Their testimonies revealed a pattern far more pervasive than even Gabriella had suspected. Flight attendant Vanessa Jenkins, who had shown kindness to Gabriella on the plane, submitted a detailed account of systematic discrimination she had observed over her 5-year career with the airline. Her report included dates, flight numbers, and specific incidents involving Benjamin Morris and several other employees. "I've tried reporting these issues through proper channels multiple times," her statement concluded. "Until today, no one was willing to listen." Corporate headquarters wasn't the only place experiencing aftershocks. Across Detroit, Benjamin Morris sat in his apartment, staring at his termination notice while his phone exploded with messages. Some colleagues expressed sympathy, but many others, particularly crew members of color, responded with variations of long overdue. Captain Reynolds faced similar isolation. His expected retirement celebration was quietly canceled, and former allies suddenly became unavailable when he called seeking support. The protective network that had insulated them from consequences for years had disintegrated in hours. By contrast, Vanessa Jenkins and other employees who had previously reported discrimination received messages from Atlantic Airways HR scheduling meetings to revisit their concerns as part of our renewed commitment to an inclusive workplace. The most surprising development came at 11:47 p.m. when Gabriella received an email from Richard Blackwell. The board member who had most strongly resisted her intervention requested a private meeting to discuss a more constructive path forward. His abrupt change in tone suggested that other board members had likely pressured him to align with the new reality or step down. As midnight approached, Gabriella finally allowed herself to process the emotional impact of the day. Sitting alone in her office overlooking the Detroit skyline, she reflected on the rapid transformation she had initiated. What had begun as a humiliating experience had catalyzed changes that would potentially benefit thousands of employees and millions of passengers. Yet she harbored no illusions about the challenges ahead. Corporate culture didn't transform overnight, and resistance would inevitably emerge once the initial shock subsided. The real work, the sustained, methodical effort required for genuine change, was just beginning. Her phone chimed with a text from her chief of staff. Media requests at 43 and counting. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all requesting interviews. How do you want to proceed? Gabriella typed a simple reply. Confirm press conference only. No individual interviews yet. We let our actions speak louder than words. She turned off her computer and gathered her things, preparing to head home for a few hours of rest before tomorrow's public statement. As she rode the elevator down to the parking garage, she mentally rehearsed the message she wanted to convey. Not one of personal vindication, but of systemic accountability and the possibility of genuine transformation. The corporate earthquake she had triggered would reshape far more than one airline or one industry. It would establish a new model for how power could be wielded responsibly to address discrimination at its roots rather than merely treating its symptoms. The expansive windows of Gabriella's downtown Detroit penthouse offered a panoramic view of the city where she had grown up in poverty and now wielded extraordinary influence. Tonight, however, she barely noticed the glittering skyline as she paced the hardwood floors, phone pressed to her ear. The death threats have increased significantly in the past hour, Terrence Washington, her chief security officer, reported. Most are just toxic internet noise, but we've identified 3 that warrant serious concern. I've increased security at your residence and arranged for additional protection at tomorrow's press conference. And my family? Gabriella asked, her composed professional demeanor giving way to genuine concern. Your mother and sisters have been moved to a secure location as a precaution. Your grandmother refused to leave her home, but we have security personnel monitoring her residence. Gabriella smiled slightly despite her worry. Her 82-year-old grandmother, who had raised 3 generations of strong black women, would indeed refuse to be displaced by threats. Keep me updated on any escalations, she said, ending the call. The backlash had begun within hours of the incident becoming public. While much of the response supported her actions, a significant and vocal minority had launched vicious attacks. The comments sections on news articles about the incident overflowed with racist vitriol. Conservative commentators questioned her agenda and accused her of weaponizing wokeness. Several white male executives had published statements warning about the dangers of overcorrection and rush to judgment. None of this surprised Gabriella. She had anticipated the backlash and factored it into her response strategy. What troubled her more were the divided reactions from other black executives and leaders. Her phone contained dozens of messages from black colleagues across industries. Many expressed wholehearted support. Long overdue. Thank you for using your power when others would have stayed silent. You've done what many of us wished we could but feared the consequences. Others, however, voiced concern about her approach. worried you've made it harder for the rest of us. Now they'll see us all as potential threats to their jobs. Respect your courage, but question your tactics. Change comes through relationship, not confrontation. These messages weighed on her more heavily than the racist attacks. They reflected genuine strategic disagreements within communities fighting the same battle from different angles. Gabriella sank onto her sofa, suddenly feeling the full physical and emotional exhaustion of the day. Had she done the right thing? Was there a less confrontational approach that might have achieved the same results without the backlash? Would her actions ultimately help or hinder the cause of racial equity in corporate America? For a rare moment, certainty abandoned her. The decisive executive who had orchestrated a corporate takeover in the span of a flight now questioned whether the personal cost, and potentially the cost to others, would be worth the outcome. Her phone rang again, displaying her grandmother's name. Gabriella answered immediately. "I saw you on the news," her grandmother said without preamble. "About time somebody with power used it right. Some people think I went too far, Grandma, that I should have handled it more diplomatically." Her grandmother's laugh came through clearly. "Girl, diplomacy is what they tell us to use, so nothing ever really changes. Your grandfather didn't get his union job through diplomacy. He got it because someone finally had enough power to force the company to integrate. But the backlash always comes when you shake the tree hard enough to get the fruit," her grandmother interrupted. "Question is, are you ready for it? Not just ready to face it, but ready to use it." This was the wisdom Gabriella needed. Not reassurance that she had made the right choice, but clarity about how to move forward from the choice she had made. "I'm ready," she affirmed, her resolve strengthening. "This can't be just about one incident on one flight. It has to create lasting change." "That's my girl. Now tell those security people outside my house they can come in for some sweet potato pie. No sense them sitting in that car all night." After ending the call, Gabriella returned to her laptop, a new clarity guiding her actions. She began drafting additional components for tomorrow's announcement, not just accountability measures for Atlantic Airways, but an industry-wide initiative leveraging Phoenix Tech's influence across multiple airlines through their technology partnerships. The Phoenix Standard wouldn't be merely a reactive response to discrimination, but a proactive framework for creating genuinely inclusive corporate cultures. It would include concrete metrics, transparent reporting requirements, and economic incentives tied to demonstrable progress. As she worked through the night, refining the vision and strategy, Gabriella also prepared herself mentally for the personal challenges ahead. The death threats would likely increase. The criticism would intensify before it abated. Her family would continue to face security concerns. Some business relationships would be strained or severed. Yet with each challenge she identified, she also recognized an opportunity. The media attention created a platform for advancing the conversation beyond superficial diversity initiatives to substantive structural change. The business disruption opened space for new approaches and partnerships. Even the backlash provided valuable data about where resistance was strongest and what counter-arguments needed addressing. By dawn, Gabriella had transformed her moment of doubt into a more nuanced and powerful strategy. She had not only reaffirmed her original decision, but expanded its scope and potential impact. As the first light of morning illuminated the Detroit skyline, Gabriella finally allowed herself a few hours of rest before the press conference. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them not just with the power of her position, but with absolute clarity about why this fight mattered, not just for her personally, but for everyone who had ever been denied their rightful seat at the table. 1 week after the incident, the grand ballroom of Phoenix Tech's headquarters buzzed with anticipation. Journalists from major networks and publications filled the seats. Industry executives, civil rights leaders, and government officials lined the walls. At precisely 10 o'clock a.m., Gabriella Washington stepped onto the stage, her presence commanding immediate silence. "7 days ago, I was denied my rightful seat on an airplane because of the color of my skin," she began, her voice steady and clear. "Today, I'm not here to talk about that single incident, but about the systems that allowed it to happen and the transformative power of accountability." The past week had been a whirlwind of activity. Atlantic Airways had implemented all of Phoenix Tech's initial demands with surprising speed. The independent audit had already uncovered 87 discrimination complaints that had been improperly handled or completely ignored. HR protocols had been completely revamped under the supervision of external equity consultants. Anti-bias training had begun for all employees, starting with senior leadership. What we've witnessed at Atlantic Airways is just the beginning, Gabriella continued. Today, I'm announcing the formal launch of the Phoenix Standard, a comprehensive framework for creating truly inclusive corporate environments across industries. She outlined the key components of the initiative: measurable equity metrics tied to executive compensation, transparent reporting of discrimination complaints and resolutions, third-party verification of progress, and economic incentives for early adopters. The standard would be implemented across all companies in which Phoenix Tech held significant investments, a list that included 3 airlines, 2 hotel chains, and numerous technology firms. This isn't about punishment or public shaming, Gabriella emphasized. It's about creating accountability systems that reflect our stated values. It's about ensuring that diversity isn't just a poster in the break room, but a lived reality in our corporations. The audience's attention shifted as a side door opened and a familiar figure entered. Benjamin Morris, the flight attendant, whose discriminatory actions had triggered these events. His appearance caused an immediate stir, cameras swiveling to capture his unexpected presence. Benjamin approached the podium, visibly nervous but composed. "Good morning. My name is Benjamin Morris, and 1 week ago I discriminated against Ms. Washington on Atlantic Airways Flight 2187. The room fell completely silent. Since that day, I've undergone a profound and painful reckoning with my own biases and behaviors. I've had to confront patterns of thinking and acting that I denied or justified for years." He paused, gathering himself. "I could stand here and say I've learned my lesson. I could ask for forgiveness or a second chance, but that would miss the point entirely. This isn't about me getting my job back. It's about acknowledging the harm I caused, not just to Ms. Washington, but to countless passengers over the years whose complaints I dismissed or denied." Benjamin turned slightly to address Gabriella directly. "What happened wasn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. It was discrimination, plain and simple. And I am committed to the difficult, ongoing work of addressing the biases that led to my actions." Gabriella nodded acknowledgement, then returned to the podium. Mr. Morris's journey represents another crucial aspect of the Phoenix Standard, the path to rehabilitation. While accountability must include consequences, it must also include opportunities for genuine growth and redemption. She announced that Phoenix Tech was establishing a rehabilitation program for employees found to have engaged in discriminatory behavior. Rather than permanent exclusion from employment, the program offered a structured path back through education, community service, and demonstrated change. "Benjamin will not return to Atlantic Airways," Gabriella clarified. "But after completing the rehabilitation program, he will join Phoenix Tech's training team, sharing his experience as part of our corporate education initiatives. His first-hand perspective will be invaluable in helping others recognize and address similar patterns." The press conference continued with Gabriella outlining the broader impact already evident. 3 additional airlines had voluntarily adopted the Phoenix Standard. A coalition of Fortune 500 companies had requested information about implementing similar frameworks. Most significantly, congressional representatives had reached out to discuss potential legislation modeled on the Phoenix Standard's accountability mechanisms. 6 months later, the transformation within Atlantic Airways had exceeded even Gabriella's expectations. The airline had emerged as an unlikely leader in corporate inclusion, with measurable improvements in hiring, promotion, and customer satisfaction metrics. The previously buried discrimination complaints had been properly addressed, with appropriate remedies provided to affected employees and passengers. The ripple effects continued to spread throughout the industry. When the Phoenix Standard certification became a consideration for business travelers and corporate accounts, economic incentives aligned with ethical imperatives. Airlines and hotels competed to demonstrate their compliance, converting abstract commitments to concrete policies and practices. 1 year after the incident, Gabriela boarded another Atlantic Airways flight, again bound from San Francisco to Detroit. This time, no one questioned her presence in first class. The crew, noticeably more diverse than a year earlier, greeted her by name with genuine warmth rather than performative courtesy. As she settled into her seat, a young black woman in business attire approached hesitantly. "Ms. Washington, I'm sorry to bother you, but I just wanted to say thank you. I'm starting my MBA next fall, and what you did, it changed how I see what's possible." Gabriela smiled. "What's your name?" "Zoe. Zoe Taylor." "Well, Zoe Taylor, take my card. Phoenix Tech has an excellent internship program, and we're always looking for the next generation of leaders." As the plane took off, Gabriela reflected on the complex journey of the past year. The transformation hadn't been easy or seamless. There had been resistance, setbacks, and ongoing challenges. The work of creating genuinely equitable systems was never truly complete. Yet undeniable progress had been made, not through symbolic gestures or empty promises, but through concrete accountability mechanisms and sustained commitment to change. What had begun as a humiliating experience had catalyzed a reimagining of what corporate responsibility could mean in practice. Gabriela opened her laptop to review the latest Phoenix Standard compliance reports. The data showed improvement across metrics, but also highlighted areas requiring continued attention. The work continued, as it always would. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination in your workplace or while traveling? Would you speak up, document what happened, or find other ways to create accountability? Comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with others who believe in the power of standing up against injustice. Thank you for joining us for this powerful story of transformation and accountability. And remember, real change happens when people with power choose to use it responsibly. Gabriela's journey teaches us that true change requires both personal courage and systemic action. When faced with discrimination, she didn't just seek individual justice. She recognized the pattern and used her power to transform an entire corporate culture. The story illustrates how racism persists even for those at the highest levels of success, and how accountability must extend beyond superficial apologies to meaningful structural change. We learn that power, when wielded responsibly, can create ripple effects far beyond a single incident. Gabriela's Phoenix Standard shows how ethical leadership can transform discrimination from an individual problem into an organizational priority with measurable metrics and consequences. Perhaps most importantly, the story demonstrates that addressing racism isn't about punishment alone, but about creating pathways for growth, education, and redemption. By establishing both clear consequences and opportunities for rehabilitation, Gabriela created sustainable change rather than temporary fear or resentment. Remember, when you witness discrimination, you have choices. Document what happened, speak up if safe to do so, report through proper channels, and hold institutions accountable for their responses. What would you do if you were in Gabriela's position? Would you use your power to create immediate consequences, or focus on long-term systemic change? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've ever experienced or witnessed discrimination, what response do you think would have made the biggest difference? Don't forget to like this video if you believe in holding companies accountable for discrimination. Subscribe for more powerful stories of justice and transformation, and share with someone who needs to hear this message today. Thank you for watching, and remember, real change happens when we refuse to accept discrimination as just the way things are, and instead take concrete action to create the world we want to see.